Good evening, race fans. Welcome to VSR Phoenix Season 7, Round 12 here on TRTN. You join us from a much sunnier and brighter disposition than we had back in Round 11 here in a very sunny Monterey County, California for Round 12 of the championship. I, of course, am Regan Clark, now starting to feel a little bit better after my half-week battle with the flu. And you join us from Laguna Seca, or the Mazda WeatherTech Laguna Seca Raceway if you've got a bit of time. Situated in Monterey County, California, and founded in 1957, it's 11 turns and 2.2 miles of FIA Grade 2. It's a jewel on the West Coast here in the United States of America, and it's host for Round 12 of the championship. That's not the only event it's going to hold, though. Over the course of its 67 years of operation, it has held plenty of series. In the modern day, it holds the IndyCar Monterey Grand Prix, the IMSA Sports Car Championships Motor Course de Monterey, Moto America's round, Trans Am Series' round, the Monterey Motorsports Reunion, and will be the staging point for the first International Race of Champions event since 2006. We're watching on board at the moment with the number 23 Ford Mustang of Wishful Winnings as we go heading down towards turn 11. We'll be able to see, from his perspective, a good staging point here for our first comprehensive rundown. We're on board then, with Wishful Winnings. So, taking us out of turn 1 immediately, that kink to the left-hand brings us into our first action spot of this track, number 2 at the Andretti hairpin. Seen plenty of last in the late breaker situations over the course of Laguna Seca's history, especially here on TRTN as well, where it featured in the TRR Sprint Series. Out of turn 3 we go then, into turn 4, a very claustrophobic opening sector, and that's going to be the running theme here in Laguna Seca, not a lot of room for error. As we go heading out of turn 4 then, up to turn 5, and on our climb uphill. Fun fact about Laguna Seca is Spanish for a dry lake, and that is because 67 years ago I should say, this was a dried out lake bed. Up through turn 5 then, one of the dodgiest corners on this track, gives rise out of turn 6 I should say to turn 7, 8 and 9, or 8A some may call it as well, at the corkscrew. Now through the real classified turn 9, the rainy curve I should say at turn 9 there, left-hander into the right hand at turn 10, down towards turn 11, a sharp almost open hairpin left style corner here, taking us round turn 11. We go to the finish line here on our first of our flying laps for qualifying. It's a 1:23.715 by Wishful Winnings. That's our benchmark. We'll see where that fares over the course of the next couple of laps. Immediately usurped for its fastest time then is a 1:22 by Hayden Puttick, then by Just Boris. We'll be getting very quickly then on to the topic of our qualifying predictions for round 12. Just Boris is predicted at a 1:21.7 with Hayden Puttick predicted at a 1:22.3. That puts one of the largest first to second gaps we've seen in quali predictions all season. Nonetheless, though, these two have become regulars at the front row. Soviet Mario's predicted at 3rd, Elite Cassie predicted at 4th, Blue Frog predicted at 5th, Wishful Winnings, who we're seeing on screen in the moment here, is predicted for a 6th place start by the end of qualifying ahead of Tyler Vermaak in 7th position, Wade Nate at 8th, VSR Pete 9th, and Antion predicted inside the top 10. That's only one bronze driver out of 10 available slots there in predictions. We'll see exactly where Antion lies at the end of qualifying, alongside all of the other drivers mentioned on this list. Recounting last round, if we can go around the track and try and find him, right now currently in 10th after his first set of times there is ETE Giles, last week's race winner, became the 4th unique name on our list, joining the likes of Tyler Vermaak, Hayden Puttick and Just Boris. Over the course of this championship, it has been a brilliant knockout drive by the Blue Oval, by Ford Performance and by Euro Titans, and especially by ETE Giles on that last round. Alton Park was absolute bedlam for these drivers. It's a nice break in the sun here for round 12 in a much drier, much more amicable Laguna Seca. Looking up towards our front row then, it is Just Boris and Hayden Puttick as predicted, but Tyler Vermaak got a much better stint than what his predictions would have you believe. Currently in 3rd, off by 0.8 of a second. Elite Cassie in 4th as he crosses the line, goes up to 3rd. They're ahead of Vermaak. with the number 98 Mercedes. It's looking very, very strong for Elite Cassie coming into this qualifying session. The Mercedes is one of the highly favourable cars for Laguna Seca. It's got just that right amount of agility and stability to get around a track as challenging as this. Do not let its relatively simple looking layout and small stature fool you at all. This is one of the toughest tracks the North Americas has to offer in motorsports, especially down to that infamous corkscrew. Trying to go too wide through there is already a challenge. Trying to just get through the corner is a challenge in and of itself. These drivers will have to tackle with that over the course of an hour-long round here. Standard sprint format for round 12. Having a look at our calendar then, as we get down towards the last handful of events of the season. Round 13 and 14 next week will be a super sprint event at Donington Park. Those will take place on the same day. Two smaller races, half points for each. The Nürburgring 24 lays claim to the last endurance round of the championship and the penultimate round of season 7 for round 15. That's double points on offer. Suzuka, back to the standard hour-long sprint format, brings a close to season 7. From this point onwards, it's 250 points still up for grabs in the championship, but it is becoming very hard to ignore that Just Boris is but moments away from becoming Season 7's would-be champion. He's currently 167 points clear of the nearest position. Looking at those standings, 583 points to ETE Gilles' 416. He'd need 33 more at the end of this round on ETE Gilles to cement Season 7's championship bid. Soviet Mario 3rd, with Funky Fish in 4th in the championship. Otzi 5th with 308 points ahead of VSR Pete with 297. The Blue Frog in 7th ahead of Regent, and in 9th position behind the pair of them is Tyler Vermack for the first time inside the top 10 here this season. He's 9th with 253 points ahead of VSR Twiglet by a single point to round out our top 10. Looking at division statistics, starting us off in bronze where things are still relatively close, but let's not make any mistake of it there. It's still as fierce as it is in the rest of the other categories. There's a 37-point gap between Antion and Smiler heading into this round, a gap that absolutely can be closed on a single round alone. It would take for one crucial mistake from either party to swing this in either direction for the bronze categories. Now we see Just Boris has come into the pits. We'll go on board with Elite Cassie here. Behind him is the Blue Frog. We can see coiling up for a flying lap with BMW, currently 8th fastest in this session. And speaking of Blue Frog, looking at our silver statistics, it's Funky Fish that leads the silver category, but only by a round. Looking at it there. Looking at that, my maths is absolutely terrible. If we take a look, run the numbers on that, it's only a 16-point gap between Otzi and Funky Fish, and Aston Martin 1 and 2 with VSR Pete in 3rd with McLaren with 297 points. Blue Frog's 4th and not too far away himself with BMW. And then lastly, of course, looking into our gold standings, where ETE Gilles has now made his way up to 2nd ahead of Soviet Mario, but still off by 167 points to the championship leader, Just Boris. So a very bizarre state of affairs for gold. And like I said, it's a 33-point gap that he'll need to create in this coming round, Just Boris, if he wants to be Season 7's champion here in Laguna Seca. It's going to take quite the accident for ETE Gilles, 2nd in the championship and currently 7th on track, for that to fall into place. It is absolutely possible that Boris could take the gold in Donington Park next weekend. Not next weekend, just next week. As we saw, that was Tommy Johansson having some trouble there in the 71. See if we can get a replay on that. Johansson, of course, made his debut back in Alton Park last Wednesday. And as we just saw, as we were looking with ETE Gilles, ahead of him was Johansson, the number 71 Aston Martin there, having some trouble down at the corkscrew. That is definitely not the first or last time we're going to see something like that over the course of this session. That is the toughest corner on track, and it's very easy to tip the scales on balance for those cars, especially when you're getting earlier and earlier on the throttle. The drivers are going to be a lot more enthusiastic with vehicle control compared to what we saw in Alton Park, where it was a bit more of a timid affair for quite a few. We do have some new drivers today to discuss. We're not exactly sure at the moment where they classify. This is TYT123 here in the number 67. This is the Aston Martin making its way out on track. You can see right there Hayden Puttock now running the colours of Alpha Tauri. Sets the second fastest time by 4/10 of a second. Watching here with the newcomer then, a royal paint job on this Aston Martin. Gold and purple. Those splashes there, the underlining of black. On TYT123's cars, you can see just there's a little bit of a stab there out of turn 3. We also have Anointed 44 in the pit lane. That's the second, the third Porsche we've seen in this championship. That's the number 314, I believe the white Porsche there behind VSR Smiler. We also have some returning names here. Jaco 14 in the number 14 McLaren, currently 2.790 off of pole position. They're 21st in qualifying. We have about 8.5 minutes left to go here in quali before we get on to round 12 of the championship. Hayden Puttock and Elite Cassie are very close to one another in those times. Only about 0.04 of a second dividing the pair of them. So it looks to be a greater clash for seconds than it will be for first. Coming into this qualifying session, Just Boris is already making a very clear and defined statement after last week's various incidents that led to not only plenty of DNFs across round 11, but also to Boris losing out on the opportunity for another race win. And that is what fell into the hands of ETE Giles, who is now up to 5th on his last lap gone. You can see, though, brand new colours for Hayden Puttock. Now sporting the colours of defunct Red Bull sister team Alpha Tauri, now known nowadays as Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, or sometimes just Racing Bulls. But it is really quite a colour scheme there. I do miss the days of Alpha Tauri, even though it is not too distant from now. But it was a properly handsome colour scheme that Alpha Tauri used to run, and it's cool to see it today here ran on the Honda NSX of Hayden Puttock. Sporting the number 10 as well, might be a Pierre Gasly fan for all I know, but still marked up as the number 313. We're watching here with Elite Cassie making their way out of turn 6 up the Rahal straight towards the infamous corkscrew. It's such a bizarre corner. It is emblematic of Laguna Seca as a venue. Its most iconic attribute is that perilous dive down here. It's what stops it from being a potential venue for more delicate varieties of cars, such as, say, Formula 1, Formula 2, and Formula 3. It's why it's really only ever stuck in the world of domestic open-wheel series here in the United States, such as IndyCar and Indy Next. Only the strong can manage such a corner as the corkscrew. Cassie crossing the line, then didn't find enough time in that last lap for an improvement against Hayden Puttock. Still sitting in 3rd and about 0.4 of a second clear the car in 4th. That's Blue Frog as he makes his way down towards the corkscrew as we speak there. The number 61 BMW is looking very hopeful coming into this round of the championship. Taking a look at balance of performance then for round 12. BMW are only losing a single kilo. It's Honda that are on the sort of biggest losers list for this as they gain 16 kilos coming into this round. Audi gaining 7. Ferrari and Lexus still losing out quite a lot of weight there in ballast, 40 and 32 kilos, but sadly neither the Ferrari 488 or Lexus RCF are stated for an appearance here in round 12, so it'll all be for naught. Ford losing 9 kilos, Aston losing 4, Ferrari's 296 losing 3, alongside Porsche and McLaren all losing 3 kilos, and that about makes up the balance of performance coming into this round. We have RDR Twiglet 3006 asking in chat, what do you think of Hamilton's first outing in Melbourne? Well, I think I try and keep my mind away from Formula 1 as it's a very sort of dangerous place nowadays to discuss, a bit of a minefield for fan opinion, but I think his outing kind of went as well as one could expect. You know, Ferrari is one of those teams that maybe sometimes can't deliver on what it promises. It is, a team that is legendary, make no mistake of that, and the presence they command in Formula One and the world of motorsports is undeniable. But they maybe bit off a little bit more than they can chew with what was definitely the most hyped entrance to a team in the history of Formula One. I mean, you're bagging 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. I think anyone would expect miracles, and that is sadly not what Ferrari in 2025 can give you. At the same time, though, it was changeable conditions in Melbourne, and I think getting to learn a new car is a difficult one, even for someone who's been around the block as many times as Hamilton. And it's especially not going to be easy when it's Melbourne and changeable. For as many times as he's done that track, it can never get any easier, especially when you're learning a brand new car, and one that is, as far as I know, quite mishmash as the Ferraris lineup. So having a look around the track here, seeing which car is next down towards the line. The number 7, one of the new drivers for today, Boyche with McLaren. We'll see what time he sets here. Currently 25th fastest in session. Crosses the line there. Doesn't find enough for personal improvement. The 314 of Anointed 44 is down towards the line. And that is a very pretty colour combination there on that Porsche. Down towards the line from 21st then. 2.4 seconds off pole. Does find an improvement, but not enough for position. Behind him there is fellow Porsche of Chris MCK08. Goes 11th fastest in the number 81. And whilst we wait to see then, with around 2.4 minutes left in qualifying, we'll just see here what Just Boris can do. Can he extend it into the 121 range before we start covering the news? Down towards the line goes the 999. And backs off there just before the finish line. So throwing in the towel on this stint of times. I think he's content there with the times he's been setting. He doesn't think that Patek or Cassie could have a pop at the time he's been setting over the course of this qualifying. A 122 knot is a tough one to beat by any stretch of the imagination for this grid. So there'll definitely be ones to rise to the challenge. We've also seen as well over the course of the last round a change for the number 169, that being Wadenator, who you can see behind Hayden Patek has ditched Ford and has gone to McLaren. We go and have a look here, trying to find that McLaren in question. The 169 of Wadenator in 7th. It was definitely a strange change to say the least. Wadenator, of course, was last sighted here on TRTN, driving this McLaren after his move away from Nissan as we went to Donington Park last Sunday. See, Boris is back out on track, so swerving for another set of laps here just before the end of qualifying. He's got a minute and a half here, so he'll be looking at one more run around the track before the checkered flag drops here on round 12. So it looks like all but solidified for Just Boris. You can see that was quite a nasty slide there by Hayden Patek. He's done very well to not end up in anyone else's front bumper. So we just cut across to him from here, coming around turn 6. Now, this is one of the dodgiest corners on track. It's not hard to see why. Very easy to run wide out of there, and then it's straight into the uncompromising embrace there of the gravel on the far right hand side of the track, and that is not easy to escape from. That is a trap that you don't just walk out of, as we saw just then from Hayden Patek. Could that be the nail in the coffin for his qualifying runs? That is the real question. So round turn 11 we go. He'll have one more run here at Laguna Seca. 30 seconds and dropping here in qualifying. We'll see what he can do. And as we stay on board with Hayden Patek, then we'll recount the news, and it's all BTCC related here today as a sort of BTCC special for our news segment. Starting us off, of course, was the news of Stephen Jelley's return to the British Touring Car Championship. He will be driving for One Motorsports Honda alongside Josh Cook for the 2025 Championship. Our next bit of news is a rumour that Nicholas Hamilton, who last competed in 2023 with Cupra, could be making his return. We just see into the wall there. That was Hayden Patek. That's the end of his qualifying run. Elite Cassie third, Just Boris looks to be taking pole position yet again. So back onto our news here as we stay on with the number 999 as they head out of the rainy curve. Our next bit of news is that Vauxhall commits to its 2025 campaign with Powermaxed Racing, now the longest vehicle in service in the history of the British Touring Car Championship in the modern day. The Vauxhall Astra, which was first introduced in 2017 for this specific model year, has now been in for its 8th coming championship, with the British Touring Car Championship having yet to have replaced the newer facelift model introduced only a few years back. Who better to back up then the Powermaxed Racing team for 2025 than their regular from last year and the 2024 Jack Sears Trophy winner Mikey Doble, who re-signs for Powermaxed Racing for the 2025 British Touring Car Championship. And that concludes the last of our sort of quick fire news session. Then right at the end of qualifying here for round 12 of the championship, Tyler Vermaak to the line from 8th up to 5th, just in the nick of time there in the number 22. It was a real decision splitter for Tyler Vermaak choosing this livery as well. He went through a few different design iterations coming into this round, but I think he settled there on the bright, vivid blue there on that Ferrari. It is an eye-catcher amongst those cars, so do be keeping an eye on that, and won't be too hard to see him as he's up there in that crucial top 5 starting positions here for a track like Laguna Seca. He'll be right in the thick of action down into turn 2. Smoggy in chat asking, who do you predict for the top 3 with these quali runs? I mean, having a look at it here, it's not going to be difficult to place Just Boris inside the top 3 on this track. He's had very few errors that have been, I would say, race-ending in nature over the course of these last couple of runs, and he's not been holding off on that McLaren. He has been pushing the car. We've seen it a handful of times over the course of qualifying, and that 122.0 is emblematic of the effort that he's been putting into this run here. It's not hard to put the man in the top 3. He's been a consistent visitor to the top 3 over the course of the season. As for who would be in the 2nd and 3rd positions, I think you're looking at them right now in these qualifying standings. It's Hayden Puttock and Elite Cassie. Those two are the only ones closest to him. I would say ETE Geos might be within a chance there, but that really rests on whether or not he can get early doors into a fight with Puttock and Cassie, or he'll be hoping that Puttock and Cassie can get into a fight with Boris, giving him much easier leeway into a potential charge of a top 3 by the end of this race. But it is mostly, I'd say, focused around what you're seeing in our top 5 at the moment as to who I would say are your top 3 predictions for round 12 of the championship. So getting a full rundown then, Just Boris starts from pole position. Alongside him on the front row then is Hayden Puttock in the Alpha Tauri Honda 313. Elite Cassie's 3rd with Mercedes. Alongside him is ETE Geos, last week's race winner. And Tyler Vermaak in 5th then rounds out our top 5. Soviet Mario in 6th, Wade and 8 7th, with Blue Frog in 8th. Wishful Winnings inside the top 10 for start. Is a great qualifying session. Again, back-to-back great qualies by Wishful Winnings. And he's just inside the top 10, rounding outside our top 10. Rounding out, I should say, our top 10 is VSR Otzi in the number 6 Aston Martin. Chris MCKOA on another good qualifying session makes 11th for Porsche in the number 81. He starts alongside Regent in 12th. VSR Grizz 13th. T. Whitey on his first race with us today in the number 67 Aston Martin makes the top 15. He's in 14th and ahead of the Silver Championship leader VSR Funky Fish in the 982 Aston Martin Vantage. They round out the top 15. In 16th is Antion with Pete in 17th, anointed 44 in 18th position for Porsche ahead of Aussie 207. And rounding out our top 20 is VSR Smiler. Tommy Johansson in 21st with VSR Daily Boy 22nd. Jaco 14 in 23rd. VSR Abok in 24th. Boyshay in 25th. DSM Yonder in 26th. And VSR Rafing in 27th position. So this ought to be a very interesting starting grid you're looking at, and it'll be an even more interesting start to this race as we'll go barreling down 27 cars in all to turn 2 at the Andretti hairpin, where I do anticipate a bit of pushing, a bit of shoving, maybe not to the same magnitude of chaos we saw in round 11 at the rather wet and wild conditions that Alton Park gave us, but make no mistake, a track like Laguna Seca is one of those sort of chaos-rich tracks despite the conditions. It's much like a miniaturized American Bathurst. So we'll stay on board with just Boris, who will take us away then on the formation lap for round 12 of VSR Phoenix Season 7. Now just heading out of Sector 1. Something I want to point out as well, just as we saw on the run through the Andretti hairpin. It isn't an exact hairpin from the perspective of the drivers. The corner slightly changes its geometry, I'd say, at and around the apex. It almost becomes a double apex corner. It is a very bizarre corner here at Laguna Seca. It's a bizarre corner in general. We're going to see here the second, actually I would make the assertion maybe the second, maybe third most bizarre corner. That's turn 6 coming up right here. If we go on board, you can see it dips there in the middle. You don't want to go too close to the inside because you run over those massive sausage curbs that kick the whole left-hand side of the car up into the air. You don't want to run too far over to the right because, like we saw during qualifying with Hayden Puttock, there's a lot of sand and gravel waiting to catch your fall there, and it's an easy spin if you hit that portion of the track. And after the Rahal straight, as short as it is, brings us then to the corkscrew. Out through turn 9 then, the rainy curve. We've seen drivers struggle with the optimum line through turn 9. It's just because it's a very long, stretching corner, and then the conditions going in it as well. It's slightly off camber and downhill. There's a lot of variables to play with on what is otherwise a fairly unassuming long left-hand curve. So, bringing us down into turn 11. On a fairly long run, all things considered, down towards the line here for round 12 of VSR Phoenix Season 7. 27 cars in all here at Laguna Seca. 1 hour of racing on the mark. As we can see from our front row here, without further ado, we are green and racing here in Laguna Seca. A fantastic start then by Just Boris, and a great start by the Mercedes of Elite. Cassie looks to already challenge the pairing of both Puttock and Boris down into turn 1. There's contact already with Cassie and Puttock. As we can see further down the line, it's just spilled over into absolute bedlam over the Andretti hairpin for lap 1. Oh my word, it has gone from bad to worse there. One contact spirals rapidly out of control, becomes 2 contacts there. That was the second one was Vermac and Gilles, and then that rejoin kicks Wadenator astray, and it's just car over car over car. It's a cascade there on the race start, and the knock-on effect is drivers massively out of position there after just one corner. Let's see if we can try and get on board, as we just see at the moment what looks to be a move on the horizon by ETE Gilles. Yes, it is. We actually now have only just caught the aftermath as ETE Gilles is up in a second. Hayden Puttock's down to 3rd, and Soviet Mario's up to 4th. So what a bizarre start that has been. But one that ETE Gilles has served to perfection, let's just say, because now he's up to 2nd. He's leaped 3 positions from race start there. Just Boris continues to open the taps there on 126.415 to 126.627 was the comparison between himself and Gilles on that last lap. Putic is looking very eager to return to second place very, very soon. We are looking effectively here at the battle of second place between ETE Gilles and Hayden Putic. What a bizarre start. Now, I was expecting maybe a slightly cleaner affair going into this round of the championship, especially compared to Alton Park. I was not expecting, however, something quite like that. There are people in chat as well asking, where did Cassie drop to? Now, let's try and locate the Mercedes, the stricken Merc, the number 98 of Elite Cassie NL. As we just saw, there was trouble for DSM Yonder around turn 3, attempting to locate the Merc. Elite Cassie down to 7th, but looking at a swift return to 6th as he hunts down Chris MCKO8, who has had a lightning start to round 12, up from 11th position on the race start. He's already up into the top 6. See Wade and Nater side by side with Abok out through the corkscrew there. He's up a position. Now looks to surf that into a move on VSR. Pete gets his nose cut off there at turn 9 at the rainy curve. Now at turn 10. This is all in the fight for 15th position, but we want to go back on board in our fight for second. And that has quickly fallen by the wayside for Putic as he now drops an extra position and is looking more realistically at a fight for third in the imminent future against Soviet Mario. So things have gone from bad to worse for Hayden Putic. He's dropped 2 positions on race start. Admittedly, he didn't suffer anywhere near as much as Elite Cassie. You can see he's still further down the order. He's up into 6th ahead of Chris MCK, but there's a long way to go here. 56.5 minutes here in round 12. We're still on board then, the number 313 Honda NSX. So we can see that step out there. Did you see that from the leading McLaren of Just Boris? The back end swinging away. Is that a harbinger for a potential big incident up in our pivotal top 10? We've seen drivers already struggle on that over the course of qualifying. Is that going to be something that manifests itself again in this race, especially when these cars are going to be put under a lot more stress than what we saw in a brief 20-minute qualifying session? We're still on board with Hayden Putic as we're looking at the battle for third here. Heading out through turn 1, our kink to the left-hand side gives rise to the Andretti hairpin here. Hayden Putic will be to the inside on Soviet Mario. Takes the leap. Is he going to have a switchback performed on him by Soviet Mario? No, he does not. Manages to hold him off there just before turn 3. So out through turn 4, into turn 5 we go. It's already been masterfully held by Hayden Putic, already beginning his comeback drive, but he got 2.1 seconds from ETE Gilles, and ETE Gilles at the moment is closer to the race lead than he is to Putic. As I say that, I think that gap has just equalised to 2 seconds either side of it for Gilles in the 57, Boris in the 999 there. That gap is continuing to open. Now we're more going to have to focus on the fight behind them. That's with Soviet Mario and the Blue Frog in the fight for 4th position. You can see as well, also a fight here, Smiler, Grizz and Tommy Johansson as they just pass up Anointed 44, who's in at the walls there down at the corkscrew. So see the wishful winnings up in 7th, Chris MCK hunting him for position there. There's an imminent fight for 7th position on the horizon as we head into the Andretti hairpin. But we want to try and see what the state of affairs is between the Blue Frog and Soviet Mario. You can see the gap at the moment, half a second. It could be BMW versus Ford for 4th position. Mercedes quickly catching up to the pair of them could make it Three's company for a fight of 4th position. Out through turn 6 we go then. Up the Rahal straight. We see from an onboard perspective here of Soviet Mario just what it's like going down the corkscrew. You can really get a sense of the verticality at the moment. We're still watching on board here the proceedings into a fight for 4th position. From the defending car's perspective then, Soviet Mario in the number 26. Having a defender's position here from the Blue Frog, and an approaching number 98 Mercedes. That's Elite Cassie NL down in 6th position. Round turn 2 we go. You can really see that at the apex of most of those corners, the BMW is at its closest there, but it's a victim of the concertina effect. The Ford just has so much more grunt out of these corners that it keeps it very, very up in the balance for if the BMW can catch 4th position. I'm sure that's weighing heavy on the mind of the Blue Frog at the moment in his fight for 4th position against Soviet Mario. They're out of turn 5, heading up towards turn 6. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time. So try and get a view around the track here, and that would have been potential fight for P7, but Wishful Winnings has opened the taps on Chris MCK08. He's going to have to start worrying about the approaching Ferrari from 9th position behind him. That's Regent in the number 420. We do have a very close battle down the line here, though. In and around the top 20 positions, Abok and Anointed off by 0.3 of a second. Aussie's only half a second behind them as they go barreling through turn 6 there on their way to the Rahal Straight. We're on board with Anointed 44 in the number 314. And he's going to back off earlier on the brakes, waiting for a mistake there out of Abok. Just surfs it through for an easy position then on the BMW. Very well held there. Let's get a replay on that. And see, just waited for his opportunity to strike and got him right there at turn 7. You can see there is that growing notion for a fight of 8th position. This is for Chris MCK08. In the number 81. Regent is hunting him down, and hunting him down with quite active vigor, let's say, there, and he just rolls him on by. Doesn't want any part of the fight that Regent brings to the table. Immediately forfeits 8th position. That is a strange one, but perhaps some tacticianry involved for Chris, knowing that the Porsche isn't the best car for tyre preservation. Has just got to play his cards. Oh, it's all gone pear-shaped, though. A spin out for Chris. What, half spin? He's back on track, but now outside of the top 10. We just see here, Soviet Mario has now lost out that position to Blue Frog. So the time did come for the number 61 to take position. Good things come to those who wait. The number 72 is in trouble. That's DSM Yonder out of turn 3. As you can see there, that bright yellow McLaren just temporarily blocking the track, but he's shifted from one side of it to the other as these two go barreling out of turn 4. We are going to have to get a look up the order there, as we can see things getting very close between E.T.E. Giles and Hayden Puttock. Now, this is in the fight for second. 4.1 seconds up the road from the pair of them is just Boris, who is now confidently leading this race. E.T.E. Giles is not giving up the chances of the championship here. He is not looking to make this a definitive run to Season 7's championship for Just Boris, which he would need 33 points on E.T.E. Giles after this very round in order to make possible, with a 167-point gap. In order to not be caught, he needs 200. And with the drive that Giles appears to be on today, he's not letting this one go down without a fight. We're on board at the moment then from the perspective of the defending car in this two-car battle. We'll quickly go on board with the perspective of the attacking car. As we scroll around here, we can see Funky Fish and Oatsy about 0.5 seconds for one another in the fight for 9th. We'll be covering that very, very soon. But let's see if we can get on board. As we saw, VSR Pete's in trouble there, down in 15th. That's at the rainy curve at turn 9 as he makes his way into turn 10. Nonetheless, let's get on board with the attacking car's perspective And that's Hayden Puttock, the number 313 Honda. You saw that snap there by the Mustang, this temporary lapse in traction. Very nearly capitalised on it was Hayden Puttock, but in the same corner that caught him in qualifying is the corner that catches him out now. Turn 6 claims its first. Oh, that is brutal for Hayden Puttock. One tiny mistake in that corner. We explained this earlier. And it is such a difficult challenge to try and bring it back in. Regent gets the jump on Wishful Winnings, but cannot get the jump on Hayden Puttock at this section on the track. And we go heading around the rainy curve then at turn 9. That is brutal for Hayden Puttock. One tiny slip there just ended up in this cascade of events heading out of turn 6. So let's see if we can go on board as Grizz finds his way into the gravel as well at turn 6 here. Maybe not in the same spectacular fashion we saw from the Honda. He manages to save the 44, much to the chagrin of the loss of his position there from 22nd down to 23rd. VSR Pete's really wrestling the controls of the 77 back into position. Currently in 16th, 2.3 seconds from the nearest car on track. Soviet Mario now having dropped behind Elite Cassie. They're back to 4th, so making this net neutral at the moment. They'll be hunting a podium. It has been a very strong return to form there. It was a bit of a hiccup in the road at the start of this race for Elite Cassie. They're back up into 4th now with just under a quarter of an hour in. So let's see if we can get on board then what was the battle down in 9th. VSR Otzi now by his lonesome. Chris MCK08, 0.8 seconds behind him. Funky Fish having dropped down to the back of the top 10. Otzi is on a proper royal drive then with Aston Martin in the number 6. Looks to be opening the taps here. Looking in from behind, you can see the purple number 81 Porsche and the dark sort of maroon red of Regent's number 420 Ferrari 296 battling there for 8th position. Let's actually get on board with them as we go heading out of turn 11. We're on board the attacking car's perspective. This is Regent, otherwise known as FR77, in the number 420 Ferrari in the fight for 8th position. And he goes soaring around it again, just like last time. So Chris is really not putting too much into that fight. I think he's just letting Regent run himself out of steam by soaring on past. I think he's hoping that the Ferrari goads itself into a mistake there. And that second time going, we've seen this battle of 8th. And a second time again, has it gone the exact same way for Regent? We'll stay on board the perspective of this Ferrari as we get a look into the middle sector. In an effort to discuss then, what on earth is there to watch out for and what caught out drivers like Hayden Puttock over the course of this race. And it's this section of the track right here, turn 6. You can see how short a run there is on the runoff there into the gravel. How little area there is for compromise on the run through the Rahal. Then out through the corkscrew, it's very easy to pitch the car over. So a very tough section of the track. It's not hard to see where people are struggling. And especially so when you exit the rainy curve there, you saw on the right hand side, it's just nothing but gravel. Yonder in trouble again. The 72 has really not had its day here in Seca. We're still on board with Regent then. After having easily completed his second battle of 8th, he's now eyeing up a move into 7th on VSR Otzi and the Aston Martin ahead of him. These three are keeping it smooth at the moment. No theatrics to be anticipated here early on. Of course, there is that still that mandated pit stop. Fuel and tyres are mandated for this, so at minimum 20 seconds of stopping for these drivers. With a relatively short pit lane as well, should be an easier time for strategy as compared to some of the other tracks on the calendar. Easier still when you remember these tyres are not exactly going to have an easier time on this track. You should know it right around the mark where they start to drop off. Eco MCFC in chat saying you should be a real commentator. That is the goal at the end of the day. It's been a bit of a tough performance for me today. I've got a really scratchy throat after my battle with the flu, so I'm having to keep it a little bit cooler than I'd like to. Normally I'd be one for sort of up in the arms, quite theatrics there, but really I am pushing my voice to its absolute limit just by trying to talk. See Region, really, that is a big overcook of the brakes there by Region. That could invite Chris back in very, very soon. We'll catch up with these three later on. Also asking in chat, whereabouts is Boris leading the race? Unsurprisingly, the 999 has had a very commanding presence thus far, watching from the perspective of the nearest car to him. That's ETE Giles, who's 7.5 seconds down the road in second place. But looking to keep this gap lively before we can conclusively tell you if Boris will be Season 7's champion. I think we'll have to wait until Donington Park before we even have a look at that opportunity. Looking at the previous champions over the course of VSR's history, of course, we have VSR Pete having won in the inaugural season in Season 1, and Funky Fish in Season 2, Chris in Season 3, Fast Fanatical in Season 4, ETE Giles, who's on screen at the moment, won in Season 5. VSR Chris, the only multi-time champion then in VSR history, won in both Season 3 and then again in Season 6 for Championship number 2. Boris looks to be joining that list on his current track record. That 167-point gap is proof in the pudding of that very claim to the throne here in Season 7. Looking around the track to see where our next battles could be coming from. It was looking hopeful for a while here between Smiler and Rafing, but it looks like the Porsche's just been able to open the gaps there. And Rafing could be vulnerable to Pete very, very shortly. We can also see Anointed's not too far away from Antion in the number 1 Ferrari. Things have simmered down there. It was a very short burst of action we got to see. Hayden Potix took his pit stop already, so looking for a long-winded overcut. He knows that the Honda's got just enough life in it there for 40 minutes of continuous pushing, and we'll see exactly where that lands him at the end of this race. I do sense a very solid comeback drive on the horizon here by the number 313. He's done it before. Can he do it again, or has he captured lightning only once in the bottle? That's what this race is here to decide. We'll catch up with Putuk later down the line. You can see the race leader, just Boris, only 2.5 seconds from him. That shows you the gap that has been dropped from that incident. He's a long, long way from the fight. Down, but not out. See here what looks to be the fight for 9th position on our hands, with VSR Funky Fish only 0.4 of a second away from Wadenator, who has been on a remarkable drive with McLaren here in round 12 of the championship. Let's see what Wadenator can do on his run down into the Andretti hairpin. You can see ahead of him as well, looks to be a lively battle with Region and Oatsy, as Region has now seemingly got the jump on the Aston Martin. It's a pity there. We were going to check back in with them to see how things got on. Turns out we missed out on that overtake. Let's see where things pick up, because Otzi's not exactly a driver to take this one sitting down. He's not going to go down without a fight, especially for a decent point scoring position like 6th place. Let's see then. Go on board the perspective of Otzi then. The number 6 Aston Martin competing in the silver category. A little cheeky cut over the curbs there. Nico MCFC in chat saying you will replace Crofty in F1. I don't think I could. I don't think I could do the work that David Croft does. I think he's one of those voices in motorsports that you can't really find a suitable replacement for. He's become part of that commentary zeitgeist, as it were, in motorsports, and I don't think I ever could. I'd say one commentator I would absolutely say could replace him, because we've already seen the sort of inklings of Crofty's slow exit from his career in commentary. The one commentator I see at the moment becoming the next Crofty is Alex Jack. I believe that's his name. He's done some of the supporting commentary for Formula One. It was the one that gave the fantastic speech, I believe it was, at Charles Leclerc's winning of the Monaco Grand Prix. That was a fantastic speech. That was cinema, had ever I seen it. I think if there is anyone in this business that looks to be taking that spot very soon, it could be him. I'm pretty sure it is Alex Jack. I might be mistaken on that. If it's not him, then it's the commentator that did that. We're still on board then with VSR Otzi as he follows Regent for position. There you can see again, DSM Yonder still in the gravel. It's really not been his day then in that McLaren. The 72 has spent more time in the gravel than it has on track. It's been doing its best impersonation of a rallycross car for the better part of about 25 minutes. Down into the Andretti hairpin we go yet again for lap 16. 37 minutes left to go. Strategy will be becoming a pressing factor in the next 8 minutes of this race. It's in and around the halfway mark. We see the bulk of our pit stops, with plenty of drivers still yet to serve. What can Otzi produce then? He had a look at it in the last couple of corners on Regent. I think he's just been waiting now, biding his time, waiting for the Ferrari to make another one of those crucial mistakes that could just net him an almost free drive for position up into what is now looking to be the battle of 5th. We've gone up a position as drivers have now started making their way into the pits. As you can see, it's just how much more manoeuvrable that Ferrari is on the cars around it. You've got a very good frame of comparison in the cars that are following in this line. Down the order, you've got an Aston Martin we're seeing here at the moment, the number 6, that is Otzi. Right behind him, the number 81 rear-engine car, the Porsche 911 992. And then right behind them, another mid-engine car, the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo. And all of these cars have different handling styles, different handling characteristics, and you get to see that put on display on a track like Laguna Seca. I mean, that's why a track like this is so proudly used as a testing circuit for a lot of teams in this profession, in sort of GT racing, and even for vehicle development. When developing a sporty car, you want it to be maneuverable on a track like Laguna Seca. This is amongst those benchmarks now. It's why Mazda owned this circuit for quite some time. Nowadays, it's owned by WeatherTech, and in our data, it was called the Mazda WeatherTech Laguna Seca Raceway. Despite all of those nameplates on top of it, it is actually owned by Monterey County itself. So this is state-owned, this circuit. Going up into the corkscrew, we're actually going to have to get a look behind very soon, as Chris MCKO8 looks to be under siege by Wadenator for 7th position. So let's go on board with those two and see where their battle boils over to. Try and get on board with them immediately. We're on board then the defending car of this too, and that's Chris. And the number 81, fighting for 7th against Wadenator. Ahead of them there as well, you can see, is Otzi and Regent. Cassie's into the pits to serve a stop-go 30-second penalty. So a rough one then. On what we thought was going to be a net neutral drive at the very worst for him today, has gone very, very far south for Elite Cassie NL's Mercedes. Just under 34 minutes left to go then in this race. The driver's settling into a nice rhythm here at the midway. You can see all of those drivers all the way down the line there to Tyler Vermack down in 10th position are all in and around just under a second gap from one another. As we go heading up the Rahal straight towards the corkscrew. We're on the onboard view now with Chris. He gets a look down into the perilous drop that is turns 6, 7 and 7A. Or 7, 8, and 8A, I should say, as we're out through turn 9. And eclipsed over that rear wing, just peeking above there, is the McLaren of Wadenator, chasing him for position. What has now become the battle of 6th. We've gone up an extra position then from our runs into the pit stop. Into the pit lane, I should say, for a lot of these drivers. Not pit stop. See, holding to the outside of the track, we just saw their rear left tyre. That was Abok, the number 27 BMW. Now makes their way onto frame there. You can see lining up behind Wadenator, the bright green and gold of Abok's number 27. He's in 24th position in this race. 0.3 of a second is the gap at the moment. Wadenator is just biding his time, waiting for a mistake out of Chris. We're going to quickly go on board with Wadenator if we can find him just before he gets the move in. This is one of the worst parts about Assetto Corsa Competizione, is the fact that we can't control the scroll rate for these drivers. It is, I think it's in order of when they join, so it doesn't go by position like you think it would. It almost feels, what would be the best word to describe that? Random, I guess, would be a start. We're now watching with Wadenator, so it's been an interesting dichotomy to study. One bronze driver versus one silver driver in for 6th position in this race. As we get down towards the halfway mark, Wadenator cooks his brakes there, but is he going to be able to loop it back into a little bit more momentum through turn 2? He's now dropped to half a second between himself and Chris MCK08, so mistakes like that are going to cost him sorely towards the midway of this. Chris has done a remarkable job to keep good life in those tyres. Not a particularly long stint, admittedly, but the Porsche is criminal for its reputation of cooking its tyres out, even under very little load stress. See in the background there, Abok moving over for Tyler Vermack and Wishful Winnings in 8th and 9th position. Wadenator still chasing, but he dropped a lot of time through turn 6, correcting that tiny slide. That's 1.2 seconds now is between himself and the Porsche in front. That kills off the fight for 6th for now. We'll see where it picks up over the course of the next coming lap. Having a look around the track, Just Boris still leads this race, and now by 20.5 seconds to the Blue Frog. ETE Gilles has taken his pit stop and is down to 15th position. Hayden Puttock is catching up to him. And if that is an indication, it could see Hayden Puttock back towards the podium by the end of this race, as ETG was boxed for his new tyres when he was in 2nd place. Now 5.3 seconds and closing. Hayden Puttock is slowly on the mend after an early doors blemish to his race at turn 6. Wadenator's now into the pits as well, calling it quits on his fight against Chris MCK08. Seeing that stab on the oversteer out of turn 6 as an indication as any to come in for brand new tyres. His McLaren has very much so cooked his goose. VSR Pete also in the pits as well, so that makes 2 McLarens in the silver category. Elite Cassie there in 21st unlaps himself from Wishful Winnings on what has been a race to forget for now. We'll see though what Elite Cassie can do over the course of the next 29 minutes. On what could have been a run for 4th is going to take a very, very heroic charge now to bring him back into the fight. He's 21st after that stop-go. Very little opportunity to fight this one back. He's just going to have to bring it to the line and be hopeful for the points up for grabs today. VSR Pete just making his way out of the pits now, and the number 77 rejoins in 20th. This is an interesting one here. ETE Geels already on the charge here on anointed 44 for 11th position. That quickly becomes the battle of 9th position after a few pit lane runs there by Wishful Winnings and I believe Hayden Puttock amongst them as well. No, Hayden Puttock, sorry. As you can see, already having lost out 9th position to ETE Geels was anointed 44. Nothing that the Porsche really could have done at this stage of the race there. Tyres are just not on his side anymore. ETE Geels has got those tyres up into their prime temperature for the rest of this race. He's got 27, just under 28 minutes to make this count. And he's on the charge. The Blue Frog remains out with Wade Nater on his tail from 14th position. Could be looking at a run into the pits very, very soon, with the rest of the field around him having caved in on the temptation for brand new tyres. He's 8.5 seconds from the nearest car to him, that being Soviet Mario in the 26 Mustang. Strategy is looking in favour at the moment of the Blue Frog. So now we're just looking to see really where our next fights could be coming from. It's tough to say at this stage of the race, just with differing strategies on display. It's clear to see that most of these battles are being lost and won now from the pit lane this late in. We saw already what happens when drivers try to make it physical. It just doesn't go well. The 313's in trouble. We just want to point this out. There's Hayden Puttock yet again, and then it's a charge for the pit lane. Oh my word, that's changed dramatically for Puttock. Is that a DNF? Could that be a DNF as he went into the pit lane there and immediately teleported to his pit lane box? That was out of turn 10, this corner right here. We're seeing from Blue Frog's perspective as he overtakes Grizz. That was a sudden shift in the dynamic there for Hayden Puttock. The 313 looked fairly hopeful coming into this round. I do have news now that I believe the 313 is out of this race. It's a bitter end to round 12 for Hayden Puttock. And that was just growing frustration with his Honda. You've seen that Puttock does enjoy a bit of a challenge when it comes to machinery. Has he bit off more than he could chew moving to Honda away from Aston Martin where we last saw him in the Sunday League? It was ambitious to say the least, and it's a recipe that can work. We've seen it in other American tracks like the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. We saw earlier in this season he was elevating that to fantastic results, being the first Honda to win an event in TRTN history. And maybe it's just been now that he's flown too close to the sun there, drunk on ambition, and it has really come back to bite him in that 313. As we've just seen, it's been a constant wrestle between himself and his machine, and it has costed him not only what was going to be a top 5 at the minimum, but now a points finish whatsoever. Just looking around the field now, you can see the majority of drivers have taken their pit stops. As we're seeing here from Tyler Vermack's perspective, right in front of him is Chris MCKOH trying to unlap himself from the car in 6th position. Vermack's had a bit of a spotty race, but he's still kicking with the 296. It's got a long way to go before that finish line. Speaking of Ferraris, there's Regent making his way into the pits as well as Chris MCKOH. Let's see how this one folds out, as these two have been on track quite close to one another over the course of this event thus far. We've also seen the pits as well as the Blue Frog, who held on to second for quite some time in this race. He'll be out of the pits much, much earlier than these two. Oh, he's overshot. Did you see that? He had to put it in reverse. He had overshot his pit lane entry. Oh, no. You see there, his pit crew just wasn't attending to his car. It wasn't going up on the jacks. He's got his hazards on. And then he's had to shift it in reverse, so he's actually overshot the box. Oh no, that's gone pear-shaped. That could be a free position then for Chris MCKOH if he nailed his run in. We'll catch up with those two later on, but that's not the kind of mistakes he needs to be making at this late, crucial point in the race. ETE Geels up to 4th Taking a look then, as we're after the halfway mark here, Just Boris has yet to take a pit stop. Soviet Mario's making his first and only, and Oatsy is up to third with Aston Martin, also having yet to have took a pit stop. The only driver besides them to have not took a pit stop in this race is Jayco 14 in 6th position with McLaren. We're watching with ETE Gilles charging on what looks to be an easy second place finish now in round 12. He'll be keeping the gap lively between himself and the championship leader Just Boris, preventing him from securing the championship for Season 7 in this round alone. We may have to wait until at the earliest Donington Park next Wednesday to get a proper conclusion on this story. Looking further down the line, we also have Blue Frog in 5th. Down the line is Wadenator in 7th. Funky Fish in 8th. Jayco is now down to 7th, I should say. He's been overtaken by Wadenator. So for Jayco, I'd say that is a pretty strong indicator that it's time for brand new tyres, where Wadenator has effectively just walked around him like he was standing still there in those corners. Let's see what Jayco's call is as he exits turn 10. Rightfully so there, into the pits. Good intuition there. I think watching a car walk around you like that is any indication as any that you need brand new tyres. And he's took the initiative. Let's see where he ends up at the end of his pit lane run. Down in 8th for now, up a free position to 7th will be Funky Fish. Chris will go up a position as well, up to 8th. Regent will make his way up to 9th. So on and so forth. Oatsy now diving for the pit lane with Aston Martin. After long last then, the number 6 is next into the pit lane. It still leaves our race leader then, Just Boris, who's on his way out of turn 6 and up the Rahal straight towards turn 7, 8 and 8A at the corkscrew. Could we be seeing the proceedings of our last of our pit lane runs then out of the race leader and potential champion to be? Out of turn 10 we go then. You can still see in the way that that car has taken those corners, still plenty of life left in the tyres, but not according to Just Boris, as he makes his leap to the pit lane, becomes our last driver then to run into the pit lane. ETE Gilles gets up in a second, so he's returned to the front row on what has been a very heroic drive, definitely making that of a driver of the day pick in my books. It's been a very strong one. Could be 2 driver of the days in a row by Gilles. And this is sort of emblematic of his driving style. He's never really there on qualifying. He's never up towards the front row. But when the time really calls for it, you can count on ETE Gilles to give you front rows. So we'll go on board the next fight, and I believe it's between Wadenator and Oatsy at this time. Let's see what the state of affairs is. We can also see that Funky Fish and Chris MCK08 look to be fighting very soon in an Aston v Porsche duel for 7th. See Boy Shay and Anointed 44, 2 of the new drivers, then going wheel to wheel down into the corkscrew. And up a position goes Boy Shay, up to 18th. Very well crafted by the number 7. We want to go on board in what we thought was going to be a close battle according to our telemetry. We've been shown sorely wrong, as Oatsy's 4.3 seconds down the road from Wadenator. He's on a lonely drive up the Rahal. So we'll stay on board then. The fight for 7th from the perspective of the defending car of the 2, the number 982 of VSR Funky Fish. You can see out of the corkscrew, it was a really tough run for the Aston. The Porsche's going to have to try and go the long way around. Funky Fish has got the benefit of being on the inside there. It's going to make him to the inside at turn 10. It's looking very close between the pair of them. Chris MCK08 rockets out of turn 10. You can see in the background, that's Region. That's Region in the background. Oh my word, it's all gone wrong for the 420. Out of the rainy curve. So we were staying on board here as we make our way around turn 10. You're going to see in the background what on earth happened. It was this flick from turn 9 into turn 10. There's Region. You can see there in the background. What a bizarre turn of fate for the number 420. That could be out of the top 10 as he falls ever closer to VSR Antioch. We may have to go on board with that battle, as it is very, very hot off the plate here. Antioch's 1.3 seconds in closing. Regent's confidence will be knocked from that incident. Could we be seeing a Ferrari v Ferrari battle? You can see Tyler Vermack's not too far away. It could be Three's Company, a Ferrari civil war at the back of the top 10. We're still on board with these two, and they've shared in already what has been a very exciting battle here in the final 20 or so minutes of racing. And it's in and around this section of the track here where the Aston seems to really bog down compared to the Porsche. The Porsche's got a lot of manoeuvrability to play with at the cost of being a lot less stable than the Aston in front of it. But it's this sort of power balancing we're getting here, this trade-off of control over reliability, is where we get to see these great studies between front and rear engine cars like the Aston and like the Porsche. We're still on board then with Funky Fish. You can see just how close Chris is able to make it through that first sector on track. Porsche is very understressed when it's in the slipstream of other cars. It's where we see other cars like the Audi, like the Lamborghini, and even like some Ferraris, depending on setup, get a little bit skittish when they're in the dirty air. The Porsche seems to really relish in this, and on a track that can already be quite stressful to follow end to end on, it is phenomenal to see Chris MCK08 handling a machine with such grace. So heading down into the corkscrew, and this is what I'm talking about here. The Aston tends to bog down in this section. I think it's maybe up to TC, maybe up to the setup that he's got. But that Porsche is just able to give it hell for leather in this section of the track. It's what keeps Chris so incredibly close. He's practically magnetised to the rear bumper of Funky Fish's Aston Martin. He's having to hold centre mass of the road through turn 11, whereas Chris has gone onto the racing line. He's able to stay with on the Aston of Funky Fish all the way down through turn 1 and down towards the Andretti hairpin at turn 2. It's this constant presence by Chris. It's this pressure he's trying to put on Funky Fish. I can sense now what he's trying to do here. He's trying to hope now that always being there present, just eclipsing his rear view mirror, is going to put enough pressure on Funky Fish to crack him and make him make a mistake, giving him an easy free position that he doesn't have to fight too much for. He knows that opportunities to properly fight for position are scarce at Laguna Seca. This is great track knowledge being demonstrated between the pair of them. They're really buying their chances. They're buying their time, waiting for their opportunity. Grizz slides right in front of the pair of them. I think this is the opportunity he's been waiting for. It's side by side down to the corkscrew. Who's going to be of the bravest of the two? They're still side by side as they enter the corkscrew. Brilliant stuff. And for his efforts, Chris MCK08 is up in the 7th. That might be one of the best moves I've seen all day here at Seca. Really just gone for it. Lick the stamp and send it. He's tired of taking the tactical option. He knew his opportunities were scarce. Scarcer still was surviving that run down the corkscrew, but he's really defied all odds to make that move possible. Brilliant stuff by Chris MCK08. A valiant defense by Funky Fish. Let's see what he can do in the next 15 minutes. I think he may have his opportunity coming up very quickly as Chris MCK08 cooked his brakes through the Andretti hairpin. It's not too uncommon to see, once they've had their fair share of pack fights, for drivers to end up a little bit lost once they're out in front. And that's what invites an easy reversal of the roles, where the once attacking car now has to be forced on the defending. As they're out in the open, they're a little bit vulnerable. They haven't got the guidance of a car directly in front of them to follow. They end up a little bit like a deer in the headlights sometimes. Is that going to be the case for Chris MCK08? Only time will tell. You can see right now it's been a very confident taking of initiative at the moment. Now that he's out in front, he's not letting any opportunities go to waste here. He's opened the gap up to 0.7 of a second on Funky Fish. Maybe that one slip up at Andretti was all that you're getting in regards to big mistakes there. I think he's sharpened himself on that battle and is just using all of that knowledge he's gained of braking zones, of how to take the corners the fastest to keep in and around the Aston, to now flip it on its head and keep him away from the Aston. Looking around the field, VSR Oatsy's up the road from the pair of them, also in an Aston Martin. And with a 124.1 to Chris MTK's 123.7 on this current track record, could be finding himself in a fight for 6th by the end of this race. But really, that is an if at this time. Tyler Vermaak right on the back of Antion. This is in for 10th. Here, the South African previous time race winner into this championship, now looking for a run into the top 10 on Antion, leader of the bronze category at this time in the number 1, looking to be the bronze division champion. Vermaak competing from gold, however, has no stake involved in such. So down into turn 5, you can see they're joined by the race leader, who even after that pit stop continues to wear proudly that first position marker all race long. It has been an utterly dominant performance by Just Boris. We're watching at the moment with the drivers right in front of him. Tyler Vermaak and VSR Antion fighting for 10th. Boris wants to get around, but neither of these two are going to be awfully considerate to let him. They've got their own battles to be dealing with at this time, and they're going to really leave it up to Just Boris to get through on his own. See that Boris has had to force his way into that fight. Now Antion's a second up the field. Vermaak's not going to be happy with that, but not an awful lot he can do. Boris is allowed to do that. We'll stay on board with Vermaak as he knows that what's already happened to him is going to happen to Antion. You can see it happens right here at the Andretti hairpin. Antion's been clever enough not to leave himself too wide open for Vermaak just to quickly take the position off of him. Now out of turn 3, they get to reignite that fight for 10th. Was that temporary addition of Just Boris to this fight enough to maybe kick a little bit of the wind out of the sails of Tyler Vermaak? He's been struggling with those last couple of corners there. He's lost a little bit of his groove that he's had in the last couple of laps that have been keeping him in this fight. I don't think it's took a lot to bring the groove back in, though. You can see for what was a few corners having a bit of a rough line, he's now straight into it and glued to the back of VSR Antion. As we go heading out of turn 9 at the rainy curve, out through turn 10 we go. And down towards turn 11, is he looking for a lunge to the inside? No, he is not. Something to point out as well, just behind them, in these two Ferrari 296s, is a Ferrari 488, and that's VSR Racing in the number 11. We thought there wasn't going to be a return of the Ferrari 488, but it was a very last-second decision by Racing to join us here for round 12. And they've done very well with the opportunity. They're up to 12th. 10 minutes left to go then. Here in round 12 of the championship. It's been an exciting one. Maybe not as chaotic as last round, though I doubt many rounds before or even after it are going to be that level of chaotic. But it has been a very strong one today, and these drivers have been able to knuckle down and get some decent points in. There is definitely a story of would have, could have, should have for quite a few hopeful names in this championship. What's most important is that ETE Geos looks to prevent Just Boris from becoming champion at this round. Will he be able to do the same heading into Donington Park next Wednesday? That's the real question. Right now, though, we're focused on the battle for 10th. And these two have shared in what is a great level of respect for one another and great respect for the track in this battle. They've not been trying anything too crazy. I think this is the craziest we've seen of it. There was a little bit of swerving around. He's trying to find that position on track to get past Antion. Antion's done a very good job to hold him up, and Vermaak's doing a very good job trying to find his way around here. He's not doing anything too brash. Even despite what could have been in his race, he's making the most of the opportunity, and he's just having a very grand race towards the back of the top 10. He knows a good fight when he sees one, and this has definitely been among the best ones he's had this season. One where he's really just able to knuckle down, lock in, and get a good fight in. And all of this pushing and shoving, or I should say not really pushing and shoving, because these two have been remarkably respectful to one another. So we can see now side by side round turn 5. Tyler Vermaak up into 10th. But Antion's he's not down and out of that fight there. It was a bit of a wide run out of turn 5. So as we enter turn 6, Antion's still going to be with him as we head up the Rahal straight. All of this fighting between the pair of them is slowly bringing them in for what could be a very last second fight for 9th position. Ahead of them there, another Ferrari, the number 420 of Regent. Antion's doing remarkably well to hold on here, but for how much longer can he do so? Vermaak's got the momentum. He's found his groove again. And looks to be elevating this into a run for 9th. For a little stab onto the gravel has just brought him back in. We're not done just yet, says Antion, as we go up through turn 1. Looking in that rear view, you can see both of them are practically level for the braking, but it's at the apex where Antion's just got so much more to give on this lap in particular. So heading down into turn 3, whatever Antion's been cooking up with setups there, it's working very nicely. He's not having to sort of twitch the car around like we're seeing with Vermaak. When Vermaak is having to wrestle that Ferrari a little bit, perhaps that might be a more personal factor, that he does like a bit of a sharper car. It's the kind of drawing factor that brought him to Lamborghini in the first place before he made the move over to Ferrari. You can see, though, in most of these corners, he is turning in. The back end is following a lot looser than the front end. It's what leads to these sort of almost micro snaps, you see. And if we go on board, you might see what I'm talking about. I'm not sure we'll be able to see it over a corner like this. But it's these little snaps back into the opposite direction. I think it may be a case where he's got this so close to the line between understeer and oversteer. The car just likes to snap a tiny bit. It gives him this very raw sense of mid-corner maneuverability. And I think it's stuff like that that is a real make or break deal for Vermaak. It's why we either get very solid results or results where he's spinning out. I think it is maybe perhaps an indication as to the kind of setups he's enjoying on ACC. He likes a car that's very close to the ragged edge. Whereas we don't see that on Antion's car. He's got good mid-corner maneuverability, but he's not having to fight the car awfully too much. And I think that's the difference at the moment. Is, despite the negative consequence that it sounds like it is, fighting the car can actually still wring a few more tenths of a second out of each lap. So looking around the field for our next fights could be coming from, I think we've got one on our hands with Smiler and Pete. Porsche versus McLaren for 15th position. We're on board then with Smiler. Used to go by Evil Smiler before he changed his name to VSR Smiler. But right now he's fighting for 15th position against VSR Pete in the number 77. Another bronze and silver situation here in Laguna Seca. With 5 minutes left to go, we're out of turn 6, heading up the Rahal straight to turn 7 at the corkscrew. And Porsche, I must say, have been a manufacturer that have had a remarkable run through. Yes, they've had some stability concerns, namely right there, like you saw, those mid-corner stability concerns when elevation becomes a factor, of which there are opportunities aplenty at Laguna Seca for that to be demonstrated. They've done remarkably well despite what on paper would seem like one of their worst tracks. And I think that is sort of a really good showcase as to why the Porsche is such a popular pick in GT racing in sort of the real world just as much as it is in ACC. It is, despite the sum of its parts, a absolutely fantastic machine. Still the most iconic sports car of all time. Proof of concept that if a design isn't broken, you don't fix it. It's why the Porsche 911 has fundamentally stayed the same since the 901 was introduced in 1951. And even then, that traces its lineage from the 356A, which was introduced also in sort of the late 40s into the early 50s, and that came from the Volkswagen Beetle, and so on and so forth. Is a design that had the potential in the first place and has done very little in the way of changing that dramatically over the course of its lifetime. And the end product is what you're seeing here, is a car that, beyond the sum of its parts, is brilliant. On paper, if you said, well, I've got a car with the engine in the rear, I'm going to a track where cars in the engine in the rear have a bit of a stability problem, you'd think, well, you're a bit mental. But as it turns out, this might just be that crazy combination, the world of engineering and the world of motorsports, and these drivers that dare choose the Porsche, just about needed. For Smiler right now, it's getting him in a very impressive 15th position. Cut away from these two for now. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time. I do believe that Pete could be on the bookings for a bit of a sneaky overtake in the near future. I say that as he drops away for Soviet Mario, but at the same time, Smiler's going to have to do the same very, very soon. You go looking around the field, the Blue Frog has really clawed back a solid amount of time towards second place, that being ETE Geels, 3.4 seconds up the road from him at the moment, but with 2.5 minutes left to go, in and around 2.5 laps of racing still on the books. Is there enough time for Blue Frog to even size up a move into second? He'd be hoping on a mistake from ETE Geels. Doesn't look like one is likely. ETE Geels has really delivered on a textbook flawless race for him. The only thing that could have made it better was leading the race, but I don't think anyone in their right mind is taking that off of Just Boris, who looks to be going on for yet another race win. It's landslide success that the 999 has had over the course of Season 7. It is not going to be a surprise to any when we announce him as champion, possibly next week by the looks of it. Maybe even the week after that, but that gap is becoming very, very tough to manage now. It would take for him to literally not attend the next 4 races for there to even be the option of another champion at the moment. In spirit, he's effectively already got the Drivers' Championship. It is a matter of if, not when, we're able to confirm it to you. It won't be on this round, because ETE Geels are still within the range for this to not be considered mathematically impossible to catch. There's still 250 points up for grab. It'll be 200 after this round, and that's the gap he'd need. But right now, with 167, he won't find 33 more points on ETE Geels in this round to make that a definitive call for Season 7. But nonetheless, that's not going to take anything away from the success he's had on this very day here in Laguna Seca as he goes on to his last lap. We'll catch up with Just Boris in a few corners' time. And it has been a very solid race for him today. Just seeing here with Jayco 14, 0.8 of a second ahead of Aussie 207. Doesn't look to be a battle, though they are close on track. Pete's now ahead of Smiler, as we thought there would be that option for it. Oh, I think that was a collision there with Abok as well. Just as we headed out of the rainy curve. That is a very, very, very late chance to have an accident there. See, from Smiler, he was already snapped a little bit to the left. There, I don't think there was the contact, but it was very close. It was razor thin. VSR Pete's got a confident control of 15th then. Boy Shea's looking at Smiler for position very, very shortly. We will be going on board with Just Boris in a moment's time, who will be crowned this round's race winner. So as we do go around the track here, we can see that our battles, be it as it may, and with Vermax so close to region, I don't think we'll go all the way down to the line. As we go on board then with Just Boris at the end here of round 12, it has been yet another textbook example of Boris's dominant streak of performances here in VSR Phoenix for round 12 of the championship. Just Boris is a winner in Laguna Seca. Another knockout performance by the 999. Just brilliant stuff there by Just Boris. ETE Geels will bring it down to the line and keep the championship lively. With no 200-point gap between himself and Boris, it will be down to Donington at the earliest that we can crown a champion here in VSR Phoenix Season 7. But a great performance by ETE Geels, and absolutely one of our picks for driver of the day. He's made the most with what he's got there. Started in the top 5, surfed the madness, and found himself to second. Blue Frog in a very mighty 3rd position. Very well done to him. Soviet Mario in 4th. Wadenator on a fantastic drive as well, I must must say, that is definitely another pick of a driver of the day, had ever I seen one. The number 169 with McLaren started much further down than Gilles and found his way still to a pivotal top 5. That is a remarkable one. That is really a coin toss between Gilles and Wade Nater for that driver of the day slot here in this race, but a very hearty P5 for McLaren and for Wade Nater there after this round. Very, very well done. Oatsy down to the line, has made the most with what he's got there. Finishes in 6th, a very solid result for him. Chris MCKO8 has shared in his fair share of battles and will take home 7th for Porsche. Very solid stuff there at the end of round 12. So as we were actually contravened by the idea that it could have been down to the line. It was down to the line between Regent and Tyler Vermack. 0.6 of a second between the pair of them at the back of the top 10. Very well done then by Just Boris and by the whole grid who made it to the end of this race. It was a tough one for quite a few we've seen over the course of this round. The drivers made the most of the chaos here in Laguna Seca and what they thought was going to be a sunny break from the madness back at Alton in round 11. It proved to be anything but. So then, having a look back at that calendar, we're in for a super sprint next Wednesday on the 26th of March at Donington Park for 2 of these super sprint format races. They're half length, half points, but still equate to 50 points at the end of that round. There's still 200 points up for grabs then, with the endurance round having double points for round 15 and then back to our standard 50 for round 16. The championship still hangs in the balance, but looks to swing in favour of Just Boris by next Wednesday. We'll see exactly where the penny drops at the end of round 13 and 14 on March 26th. That's all from us, though, on TRTN. We hope that you've had a very good time watching this stream. It has been a fantastic race to commentate on. Very tough one for me with the condition of my my throat after my battle with the flu. It's still quite scratchy, very hard for me to raise my voice. But I, again, wouldn't want to miss this for anything. And we thank you for tuning in yet again. If you're staying on with us for the end of this week, outside of VSR Phoenix, we've got the NLRL Console Endurance Series Watkins Glen round coming up this Saturday, and then our 3rd round of the NLRL Sunday League. And that is one we are looking forward to very, very much. That's all from us, though, on TRTN. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and good night.